doesn't see the need for people to consult him about his own health. So I'll speak for myself because under the Constitution in Article 10, Trevor, the problem is that whenever any state organ makes or implements public policy decision, and this is a major public policy decision because the lifting of a ban that was imposed because of a certain reason, when it is being lifted, that is a matter that is under Article 10, that whenever you make such a public policy decision, you are bound by these principles and values of governance, amongst them participation of the people, or what we call public participation, patriotism, human rights, and sustainable development. Yeah. So, Mheshimiwa Osoro, the problem is that we as a country at some point decided that we were going to ban GMOs, and there was a basis for that ban. That conversation that you are saying should be had, the science explained to us whether this is harmful or not, needs to happen prior to the lifting of the ban. That is the only problem we have, so that we can have opportunity. Because at what point will you have that opportunity to listen to the science if the food is already here? And as we speak, Mheshimiwa Osoro, you know that there's already ships that are docking in Mombasa, and people don't even want to tell us whether that is organic maize or whether it is GMO. So the problem is that this decision, because it affects all of us, there should be a conversation, there should be public participation. Let the expert explain this thing to us. And in fact, the question we are asking is, if there was a ban imposed and there was a reason for the ban, if the science has changed, if we have new information, we are not fools, we are not impervious to knowledge, we are not allergic to learning, Osoro. Teach us the science. We are teachable people. Mheshimiwa Wamatangi here. We have capacity to learn and appreciate new science, you know. So you don't just assume that because Sifuna is not a scientist, if you explain to him how a chicken and an egg, which one comes first, he will not understand. I mean, please show us some respect. Number two, Trevor, that respect that we expect from public servants is not something that we have just come up with. It is under our Constitution in Chapter 6. It requires that, you see, these public offices that we occupy, you exercise the powers of that office in a manner that demonstrates respect for the people. We sat here when we were doing the vetting of these cabinet secretaries, and we told you that some of these people do not have the wherewithal to be cabinet secretaries. And in fact, if you look at the minority report that was written by the minority side in the National Assembly, we singled out this current CS that people are talking about impeaching, Mheshimiwa Moses Kuria, because we know who he is. He should exercise the powers of his office in a manner that demonstrates respect for the people. You cannot stand up and say, oh, you know, in Kenya there are 1,000 ways to die. Let's add one more way to die. You are going to die anyway. Something is going to kill a man, as we say here in Nairobi. Trevor, that does not demonstrate respect for the people who you are supposed to be serving. And number two, you are a servant. You're not our boss. You can't just say, hey, mutakula hii GMO, mupende musipende. It's not possible. So I am happy that the governors have added their voice to this. So the governors have spoken, the members of parliament have spoken, both in the National Assembly, in the Senate, the church has spoken, everybody has spoken, the farmers have spoken. Why can't you just listen to us? That before you do this Gazette notice, allow for this process to go on, let people debate the science, let people show us the pros and the cons, assure the public, because right now, even if you see the way the ordinary mwananchi is speaking, people are frightened about this GMO. And number two, Trevor, I had some people saying, oh, let this maize come in, then you label it and say, this is GMO, this is non-GMO, now you have a choice. It is a false choice for somebody who has not eaten. You cannot tell somebody who has not eaten that this is GMO is 20 shillings and this one is non-GMO is 250. Now you have a choice. It is a false choice. The person in that particular situation does not have a choice that we are presenting. So let us have the conversation. Okay. Let there be respect. As a Catholic, I suspect Wamatangi is Catholic as well. He has the demeanor of a Catholic. As a Catholic, we take our directives and directions from the Pope. And the Pope already issued an encyclical in 2015 on the position of the Catholic Church on GMOs. And he has said, as a Catholic, Sifuna, I cannot touch it. Okay. So, musiingilie mambo yangu ya kanisa yangu.
Okay. Yeah. But you know, the Council of Governors Agriculture Committee has faulted the government for failing to consult the public for lifting this ban. But they're not saying whether it's a bad thing or a good thing.
Trevor, morning. Let me also say good morning to our viewers. And as I join the discussion, I think, Trevor, the mess in the discussion is really that simply there has not been proper education first, and then moving forward, then people get to understand. After they understand, then you can make sense of what you're supposed to do. But also to decry the misinformation in the discussion right away from all over, such that now people are tending to add so much information or misinformation to the already existing misinformation. Trevor, I think what we need to tell our viewers is really what first does it mean to genetically modify food. And if you ask me, I would give an example for our viewers who are watching and say, remember when we were trying to fight malaria, and you would find that a drug for malaria would be made, and then it would be administered on people to fight malaria. Onwards, the malaria strain would mutate and become resistant to that disease. Scientists would get back on the table and modify that drug, give it a strain that will now tackle the tougher strain of the disease. And so until finally you're able to overcome malaria. Now, in genetically modified foods, what happens is that they modify the genes of the food for certain or specific reasons or issues. For example, if you have a certain pest, that attacks maize or corn in a certain region, that particular maize seed can be modified. The strain can be modified in a way that it will resist that type of pest in that area, and definitely now you're going to have more harvest. That's literally what it means to modify the food. The question is, have we had enough education to the people to be able to understand that this is really what it means? The discussion on GMOs for a long time was preceded by misinformation, and most of the misinformation was on fear-mongering, a lot of it, so that if you eat this food, you'll die, it will make you explode, and you'll become obese. So many things were said about it. And I think to add to the scare, there was a time most of the media was running photos of, for example, if it is a pumpkin, you find a pumpkin photograph somewhere in Netherlands that looks like, a whole sphere. You find a banana that is like a javelin, and people would ask themselves, how come that these GMO foods are this big? And it got into people's minds that it is chemicals that have been introduced that are essentially dangerous to health. I think what we would need to do as a country is first to take people through the steps of getting to understand what GMO is, and then once we've done that, we can get into then an agreed phased introduction. I say phased introduction because that question, as has been addressed by my two colleagues here, is an important question. Farmers had already planted. Farmers will be harvesting. Others still have harvest. So that question of when do you get to introduce that, what happens to our farmers must also be addressed. So that eventually, once we agree if we are going to go GMO, then it will be, in a well-structured way, picking out regions, what we are modifying against, and then what is the place of our farmers. At the end of the day, Trevor, even if you go to countries that have adopted GMOs, that choice is still there. You find that when you go to a supermarket, they'll have a small shelf there where they label organic foods. And then they have now the rest of their last. That's still there. However, even if you go to Europe, you still find that there's that option and the other option.
But let me bring in Silvanus on this.